The Roman Empire included large territorial holdings around the Mediterranean Sea in Europe, North Africa, and West Asia. Military campaigns were sent across Europe and North Africa in order for Rome to expand more and more. Their southern border was in North Africa, at the beginning of the Sahara Desert. This arid, mostly uninhabitable place assured a natural border and defense between other civilizations. But also, it stopped the Roman expansion. Little is known about Roman expeditions that existed beyond this point. However, the Romans had a few attempts on exploring deeper into the African continent. Sub-Saharan Africa was explored by Roman expeditions between 19 BC and 19 AD, most likely in an effort to locate the sources of valuable trade goods and establish routes to bring them to the seaports on the coast of North Africa, thereby minimizing disruption in trade caused by conflicts among indigenous tribes and kingdoms. Most of these expeditions began as military campaigns, while the last one may have been initiated in the interests of trade relations, but the purpose of all of them seems to have been in the interests of expanding Roman presence in Africa and locating the source of the most valuable trade goods. Rome had established trade relationships with a number of kingdoms in Africa, whose merchants brought goods for trade from the interior to the three great Roman centers on the North African coast: Leptis Magna, Oea, and Sabratha. But the desire for even more goods and direct access to them prompted Roman excursions to the sub-Saharan regions. The 5 expeditions were in 19 BC and in 41, 50, 70, and 90 AD. The cultural impact of the Roman expeditions on the sub-Saharan cultures, in fact, is still debated among scholars. Trade among the different kingdoms and tribes of Africa was already well established by the time the Phoenicians founded Carthage, 332 BCE. The overland trade routes, connections, and seaports had been used by African merchants for centuries, and once the Carthaginians gained a foothold in North Africa, contributed to the wealth, prestige, and power of their central city and others in the region. Trade centers were already established on the North African coast by the semi-nomadic or nomadic Berber tribes of the region, who traded with each other and may have exported goods elsewhere. After 30 BC, following the death of Cleopatra VII, Rome took Egypt and added it to its North African holdings, which was a very important grain supply to Rome. The empire was supplemented through the trade at the cities of Reggio and Tripolitania. Rome had established trade relations with the other kingdoms as well. From West Africa, other traders also brought their items towards Tripolitania, but these trade routes were often disrupted by conflicts between kingdoms or different tribes. It has been suggested that one of the tribes involved in this region's trade were the Garamantes, though this claim has been challenged. It is not known if the Garamantes were directly involved in trade coming from West Africa. However, it's possible that they interrupted trade through raids on caravans, which sparked a response from Rome, leading to the first of Roman expeditions. Lucius Cornelius Balbus, 1st century BC, was proconsul of Africa in 19 BCE, when he was ordered by Augustus Caesar to put down the Garamantes, who were in some way interfering with Roman interests in the Fezzan region of Libya. Balbus led 10,000 legionnaires from Sabratha against the Berber tribe and conquered them. Afterward, and perhaps on his own initiative or on orders, he sent a number of his men onward to explore the Land of Lions, which lay on the other side of the Hagar Mountains in the central Sahara region. Balbus's men returned with the report of a large body of water, now thought to be the Niger River, and Roman coins and other artifacts have been found in the region, supporting the claim that Balbus's men crossed the mountains and explored the region. This evidence is debated. Another expedition was led by Paulinus. In the course of this campaign in 41 CE, Paulinus led his men over the Atlas Mountains in southern Mauritania. He reached the summit of the mountains after a 10-day march, and according to Pliny, then traveled a significant distance down through the plains to explore along a river referred to as Gur, and then the area around the Daras River, modern Senegal River. Evidence for Roman presence in this region comes from artifacts and coins discovered there, many in and around the city of Akjujd. In 50 AD, one Septimius Flaccus led an expedition from Leptis Magna against a rebellious tribe, which was disrupting trade in the region controlled by the so-called Garamantes. Who Flaccus was is equally unclear, as he is not identified with any legion, and no earlier mention is made of him. Some scholars have suggested that the geographer Ptolemy, who wrote the account of Flaccus's expedition based on an earlier source, got his name wrong. Probably this was the case, or he may have omitted information he felt was unnecessary. Flaccus must have had some military background, however, in order to command a force that led them successfully against whatever group of people was causing the problem in the southern regions. Usually, military commanders were sent in military expeditions. This possible general marched into Garamantes' territory and subdued them. He then traveled on over the Tabesti Mountains and into the land known as Agasimba, which was north of a great body of water known as the Lake of Hippopotamus and Rhinoceros. This lake has been identified as Lake Chad. Flaccus's expedition is the first one known to have interacted with the populace of this region at any length, but no details are available on what this contact consisted of. Scholars agree that Agasimba was to the north of Lake Chad, but as the lake was much larger at the time, precisely where it was, how large the region, and who lived there is unknown. It is assumed it was controlled by the Garamantes. However, Festus concluded business with the Garamantes. They seem to have been on friendly terms with Rome 20 years later, when one Julius Maternus led an expedition into their territories. The problem with sources regarding this expedition is that it is unclear who Maternus was and what position, diplomat, merchant, or military commander, he held. There is no mention of Maternus before or after this expedition, and details of the excursion itself seem to support any of the three possibilities. He traveled in the company of the Garamantian king, and so as a diplomat could have been forging better political relations. As a merchant, forging better trade relations. As a general, helping the king to put down rebellious subjects, which would have benefited them both. Anyway, whoever he was and whatever position he held, Maternus's success seems to have been based on the reports of the expeditions which went before him. Like Flaccus, he crossed the Tabesti Mountains and explored Agasimba, and like Festus and Balbus, explored the region around the Niger River. However, an expedition was also sent to go find to sources of the Nile and went beyond the Sudan. All these expeditions were supported by legionnaires and had mainly a commercial purpose. Only the one conducted by the Emperor Nero seemed to be a preparative for the conquest of Ethiopia or Nubia. In 62 AD, 2 legionnaires explored the source of the Nile. One of the main objectives of the exploration was to locate and obtain gold, using camels to transport it overland back to Roman provinces in the Mediterranean coast. Sea voyages between Rome and North Africa, conversely, could be completed in less than a month, and so were much more lucrative, and further safer for both investors and crew. Although there is no defining document explicitly stating why the overland expeditions were launched, it is reasonable to conclude, based on the nature of the military campaigns and the Roman independence on African goods, why the Romans didn't expand deeper into Africa is because of a multitude of reasons. But this is a topic for another video.